Imagine holding coins in your hand worth millions. What looks like ordinary change from 1993, 1994, or even 2002 could secretly be a fortune waiting to be discovered, with single dimes and pennies carrying mind-blowing values from $28 million to $39 million. And the moment you realize their hidden worth, everything you thought about spare change changes forever. Welcome back to the channel. Imagine pulling a completely ordinary-looking dime from your pocket, the kind you've ignored 1,000 times, and discovering that this tiny silver disc dated 1993 with a simple P mint mark could be whispered about at an almost unbelievable $32 million. A face value of 10 cents transformed into a fortune that rewrites history and ignites dreams. Because this 1993 P1 dime has become one of the most talked about what-ifs in American coin lore. A coin that forces collectors and everyday people alike to stare at their change just a little longer, wondering if destiny is hiding in plain sight. And the moment you hear that number, your mind starts racing. How could a modern dime, minted in the millions, ever climb to such an impossible valuation? And that question is exactly why this coin has captured so much attention, because it sits at the crossroads of rarity, mystery, condition, and the endless human fascination with mistakes and anomalies. The 1993 Philadelphia dime was produced during a period when the U.S. Mint was pushing massive output, machines running day and night, dies wearing down, pressure fluctuating, planchets moving at lightning speed. And within that industrial chaos, the possibility of something extraordinary slipping through becomes intoxicating. Collectors obsess over microscopic details. The sharpness of Roosevelt's profile, the clarity of the torch, the separation of the bands, the exact alignment of the strike, the composition balance, and the presence of any deviation so subtle that only a trained eye would ever notice. And when speculation swirls about a 1993 P dime that exhibits a once-in-a-generation combination of ultra-high-grade preservation, freak mint anomalies, and provenance that links it to a unique moment in minting history, the value conversation explodes. Because value in coins is never just metal, it's narrative, it's scarcity layered on top of desire, it's the idea that there might be only one example that checks every box collectors dream about. Imagine a dime struck on an experimental or transitional planchet, or one that somehow escaped with a dramatic off-center strike yet retained full design elements, or a piece showing a stunning double die effect so crisp it looks like motion frozen in time. And then imagine that same coin surviving 3 decades without a single nick, scratch, or sign of circulation, preserved in almost mythical condition, the kind grading services whisper about and museums want to display. Suddenly that 10-cent coin isn't just a coin, it's a legend, and legends are what command jaw-dropping numbers at auction. The 1993 P dime sits in a fascinating era of Roosevelt dime production, clad composition already standard yet still capable of surprising outcomes. The Philadelphia Mint not using a mint mark until later decades makes the P designation itself a marker of identity, and collectors chase these distinctions relentlessly, because every tiny letter tells a story about where and how a coin was born. Rumors circulate in collector forums about test strikes, about dies prepared differently, about coins set aside and forgotten. And while many of these stories blur into myth, every so often history proves that the impossible can be real, after all. Who would have believed that other seemingly common coins from the late 20th century could sell for millions until it actually happened? And that precedent fuels the fire around the 1993 P dime, because markets are driven by belief as much as evidence, and when belief aligns with even a sliver of plausibility, prices can skyrocket. Think about the psychology of the ultra-wealthy collector who already owns the classics, the 1916 D Mercury dime, the 1894 S Barber dime, the legendary rarities that everyone knows. What do they chase next? Something no one else can have, something modern yet unique, something that rewrites the rulebook. And that's where a coin like this hypothetical $32 million 1993 P dime becomes irresistible. It represents the thrill of discovery, The idea that greatness doesn't only live in the distant past, that even in our own lifetime's history can be minted and overlooked, and that idea resonates deeply in a world where people crave hope and surprise. The technical side only deepens the intrigue, because experts know that dime dies are among the hardest working in the mint, enduring enormous pressure, which increases the chances of die cracks, clashes, and doubling, and while most errors are minor, the rare catastrophic ones create visual drama that collectors pay dearly for. Add to that the possibility of a wrong planchet error, perhaps a dime struck on a silver or experimental alloy blank, instantly transforming its intrinsic value and historical importance, and suddenly you have a recipe for headlines. The grading scale becomes another battlefield, because the difference between MS-68 and MS-70 can mean millions, and a 1993 P dime achieving a grade at the absolute top of the scale would be a unicorn, something that challenges the limits of modern minting quality. Collectors would line up not just to own it but to be associated with it, to have their name linked forever with the discovery, because prestige is priceless. And the media attention would only amplify the hype. Stories of someone finding it in a bank roll, in an old jar, in a forgotten drawer would spread like wildfire, inspiring millions to check their change. And that cultural impact alone feeds the valuation, because coins are cultural artifacts. They reflect the dreams and obsessions of the time. The 1993 P dime story taps into a universal fantasy that life-changing wealth might be hiding in something mundane, and that fantasy keeps the market alive. Skeptics will always argue numbers. They'll point out mintages, probabilities, and past sales, but even skeptics can't deny the power of a perfect storm, where rarity, condition, error, and story collide, and in that collision values can leap beyond logic. $32 million becomes less about metal and more about meaning, about owning a piece of modern myth, and that's why this dime refuses to be ignored. It challenges assumptions, it sparks debate, it keeps collectors awake at night, and it turns ordinary people into dreamers. Because if a 1993 P dime can theoretically reach such heights, then every coin deserves a second look. Every pocket has potential. Every handful of change is a lottery ticket wrapped in history. And that's the magic that keeps numismatics alive and thriving. So the next time you hear the clink of coins, remember that the smallest piece can carry the biggest story. Next, 1994 Mint P Mark I dime. Picture this moment clearly, because it sounds impossible at first, but it is exactly why millions of people around the world suddenly care about an ordinary-looking 1994 Mint P Mark I dime, a coin you have probably spent without a second thought, yet whispered through collector circles is a value so shocking it almost feels illegal to say out loud. $31 million tied to a 10-cent piece, and the instant that number hits your mind, everything you thought you knew about modern coins collapses, because this story is not about fantasy or hype alone, but about how tiny variations, overlooked production quirks, timing, survival rates, and collector psychology can combine to push a simple coin into legendary territory, and the 1994 Philadelphia dime sits right in the center of that storm. Born during a period when the U.S. Mint was balancing efficiency with precision, pushing massive output while quietly dealing with die fatigue, metal inconsistencies, and transitional quality controls that created windows where the unexpected could happen. And when those windows open, history slips through unnoticed, because at the time no one at the Mint was thinking about future collectors or multi-million-dollar valuations. They were thinking about meeting quotas, keeping presses running, and getting coins into circulation as fast as possible. And that pressure is exactly what makes certain years fascinating decades later, because perfection was not always the priority, consistency was. And when consistency breaks in small, but repeatable ways, a new category of rarity is born, one that hides in plain sight for years until the right eyes start noticing patterns. And with the 1994 P dime, those patterns began emerging slowly, first as rumors among specialists, who noticed unusually sharp strikes paired with subtle planchet anomalies. weight deviations just enough to raise eyebrows, and surface characteristics that did not quite match standard expectations, and at first these were dismissed as normal variants, because modern coins are not supposed to be rare, not supposed to be mysterious, not supposed to command life-changing money. But numismatic history has a habit of embarrassing certainty, because again and again it proves that rarity is not about age alone, it is about survival, condition, and circumstance. And the 1994 p dime benefited from being too young to be respected and too old to be protected, meaning countless examples were damaged, cleaned, scratched, or lost before anyone realized there might be something special worth preserving. And that silent attrition is what fuels extreme value later, because when demand finally wakes up, supply has already been destroyed, and collectors hate nothing more than realizing that the best examples are gone forever, pushing competition into overdrive for the few that remain untouched. And that competition is where numbers start climbing into territory that sounds unreal to outsiders, because $31 million is not about face value or silver content. It is about the hypothetical apex, the absolute finest possible specimen tied to a compelling narrative, certified, documented, and chased by the right buyers at the same moment. And moments matter in this world, because value is not static, it spikes when timing, publicity, and scarcity collide, and the 1994 p dime story feeds perfectly into that mechanism, especially in an era where social media, online auctions, and global collecting communities amplify every discovery instantly, turning whispers into worldwide hunts almost overnight. And suddenly people who never cared about dimes are rolling bank boxes, checking dates, scanning mint marks, and holding coins under lights like archaeologists searching for clues. Because the idea that a single overlooked dime could theoretically represent $31 million rewires the brain, making ordinary routines feel charged with possibility. And that psychological effect is powerful, because collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying hope, status, and the thrill of owning something almost no one else can. And the 1994 p dime taps directly into that desire by representing modern rarity, the idea that history is still happening and that treasures are not limited to ancient gold or colonial relics, but can exist within living memory, pass through hands, pockets, and cash registers without anyone knowing. And when experts began piecing together data, noting how few top-tier examples surfaced, how consistent certain markers were among them, and how aggressively advanced collectors competed when one appeared, the narrative gained weight, because markets respond to patterns, and patterns suggest structure rather than coincidence. And as grading standards become stricter over time, populations at the highest level shrink even further, because what once passed as pristine is now reclassified as merely excellent, leaving only a microscopic number of coins capable of anchoring extreme valuations. And that is where the $31 million figure finds its footing, not as a casual claim, but as a projection of what the ultimate specimen could command if offered under perfect conditions, surrounded by enough attention, prestige, and competitive tension. And skeptics often laugh until history reminds them that similar laughter once followed early claims about other modern rarities that later stun the world, because disbelief is always strongest before confirmation. And the 1994 p dime thrives in that space between doubt and desire, where arguments fuel interest rather than extinguish it, because every debate sends more people searching, more eyes examining, more coins being pulled from obscurity, and ironically that search rarely produces the treasure, which only makes the few known examples more desirable, reinforcing this cycle. And beyond numbers and mechanics, there is something deeply human about this story, because it reflects our longing to believe that extraordinary value can hide inside ordinary life, that something small and ignored can turn out to be monumental, and that belief is timeless, whether it is applied to coins, art, or ideas. And the 1994 p dime has become a symbol of that belief in the collecting world, reminding people that attention creates opportunity, and that history does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it waits quietly until someone finally listens, and as long as people continue to check their change, share discoveries, argue possibilities, and dream about what might still be out there, the legend of the 1994 Mint P Mark I dime and its $31 million potential will continue to grow, evolve, and capture imaginations. Next, 2002 D1 dime USA coin. Imagine holding a coin in your hand that most people see as nothing more than a dime, ordinary in appearance, commonplace in circulation, yet hidden within its small, silver form is a story so astonishing that it has captured the imagination of collectors and enthusiasts worldwide because this is no ordinary coin. This is the 2002 Mint D Mark I dime, a piece so unassuming that anyone could have passed it without a second thought, yet it has been linked to an eye-popping theoretical value of $28 million. And from the very first moment you hear that number, your mind struggles to reconcile how something worth just 10 cents at face value could ever climb into the tens of millions. But the truth lies not in the coin's denomination or metallic content, but in a unique convergence of minting anomalies, survival rates, collector psychology, and the unpredictable forces that drive modern numismatics into extraordinary territory. And the story begins in 2002 at the Denver Mint, where pressure to produce coins efficiently and accurately was at an all-time high, with presses running continuously, dies subject to fatigue, planchets prepared in vast quantities, and quality control protocols trying to keep up with unprecedented production demands. And within that environment, small deviations began to occur, tiny variations in strike pressure, subtle differences in metal composition, microscopic die markers that repeated across only a fraction of the coins, and edge inconsistencies so slight that only the most trained eyes could detect them. And at the time, none of these would have seemed important because dimes are everyday objects meant to be spent, exchanged, and forgotten. But decades later, those very imperfections became the seeds of an extraordinary story as collectors began noticing patterns, anomalies, and minute differences that separated a common dime from one that could, in theory, represent untold wealth. Because in the world of numismatics, value is rarely about what a coin is supposed to be, it is about what it accidentally became, and the 2002 D dime exemplifies that principle perfectly, existing in a strange liminal space where modern production meets the rarefied expectations of extreme collectors. And what makes this coin so compelling is the way history, chance, and human attention intersect. Because every coin carries a story, but only a few ascend into legend, and this dime has done just that, not because it is old or inherently rare, but because the conditions of its creation, combined with the scarcity of pristine, untouched specimens, make it a modern rarity, a coin that challenges our assumptions about how value is created and perceived. And the hunt for such examples is relentless, with collectors scouring rolls of change, bank boxes, inherited collections, and forgotten stashes, looking for the subtle markers that transform a simple dime into a potential multimillion-dollar treasure. And those markers are not obvious to the untrained eye. They require magnification, patience, and an understanding of the complex interplay between die wear, planchet composition, strike quality, and circulation history. And as stories spread online and through auction houses, excitement snowballs, because the narrative itself has power, tales of accidental rarity, lost and found treasures, and coins that defy expectations feed the imagination and drive markets into frenzies. And every time a new example appears, it validates the legend, reinforces the hype, and reminds collectors that fortune can be hidden in the most mundane objects. And the 2002 D dime has become emblematic of that possibility, a modern reminder that even in an age of mass production, where millions of coins are struck annually, perfection and rarity can emerge almost by accident, creating objects of desire that defy logic and command attention far beyond their face value. And the psychological impact of imagining a 10-cent piece potentially worth $28 million cannot be overstated, because it reframes our understanding of money, chance, and human curiosity, inspiring ordinary people to examine their change, prompting experts to debate and analyze, and fueling online communities where theories, sightings, and discoveries are shared with contagious enthusiasm. And as grading standards evolve and populations shrink due to lost, damaged, or improperly preserved coins, the few surviving top-tier examples gain even more prominence, because scarcity drives competition, and competition drives value, culminating in the breathtaking theoretical estimate of $28 million for the absolute finest specimen, a figure that shocks, amazes, and motivates everyone who learns about it. And this story transcends numbers, becoming a tale of human ambition, obsessive collecting, and the thrill of discovery, because the 2002 dime reminds us that extraordinary wealth and fascination are not confined to ancient artifacts or precious metals, but can exist in something as simple and ordinary as the coins that pass through our hands every day, and the legend grows with each retelling, fueled by the endless search for perfection, the hope of accidental discovery, and the excitement of imagining what might still be out there waiting to be found. And this cycle of desire and discovery ensures that the story of the 2002 Mint D Mark I dime will continue to captivate, inspire, and astonish collectors and enthusiasts for generations to come, proving that even the most modern coins can hide the potential for unimaginable value, and that history is always in motion, quietly creating treasures in plain sight. But the allure of the 2002 dime is not just in its rarity or potential multi-million-dollar valuation. It is in the narrative of chance and circumstance that surrounds it, because each coin produced that year carries a silent history of the Denver Mint's operations, the pressures of high-volume striking, the quirks of human oversight, and the fleeting imperfections that can only be appreciated decades later when collectors and experts begin to scrutinize every tiny detail. And when you think about it, the excitement grows exponentially because the modern coin collecting world is hyper-connected, with online auctions, forums, social media groups, and virtual marketplaces all amplifying even the smallest discoveries into global phenomena. And the moment someone identifies a potential high-value specimen, word spreads instantly, creating a ripple effect where ordinary holders of 2002 dimes suddenly begin examining their own coins with magnifiers and flashlights, rolling through jars. A forgotten change with the hope of finding what might be the next legendary piece, and that human psychology, the thrill of possibility, the fear of missing out, the dream of discovering a fortune where others have overlooked it, is what fuels the coin's ongoing mystique, because it transforms what would otherwise be an ordinary circulation coin into an object of obsession, drawing in both seasoned numismatists and casual enthusiasts who previously paid little attention to dimes. And as each news story surfaces of someone finding a well-preserved 2002 untouched by years of circulation, excitement compounds, because it validates the idea that history is still being written, that extraordinary value can arise from modern production, and that even something minted less than 30 years ago can suddenly become a key piece in the puzzle of extreme rarity and demand. And when you examine the technical aspects of the coin, the intrigue deepens, because experts note subtle variances, such as die clashes, slide over or understrikes, microscopic planchet anomalies, and even variations in metallic sheen that, when combined, create a population of coins distinct from the millions of standard examples, and that population, limited by survival, condition, and detection, is what underpins the staggering $31 million, or, in this case, $28 million, valuation. Because true rarity in modern numismatics is not merely about numbers struck, but about how few pristine, untouched specimens exist. And in the case of the 2002 dime, that number is almost impossibly small, which only heightens desire, drives intense competition at auctions, and makes even theoretical valuations jaw-dropping. And collectors are not just motivated by the financial aspect. They are drawn to the story, the thrill of the hunt, the chance to own a piece of history that very few people in the world will ever see in top condition. And that narrative is reinforced as grading. Companies assign numbers, populations shrink at the highest grades, and every coin discovered becomes both a confirmation of possibility and a reminder of how much is still hidden, because with each new find, collectors realize that despite decades of searching, there are still treasures lurking in the circulation, forgotten rolls, or inherited collections, and that reality keeps the hunt alive, feeding the feverish examination of coins by enthusiasts who know that a single perfect 2002 dime could literally redefine a life, and the psychological impact of imagining $28 million in your hands cannot be overstated, because it transforms the way we perceive everyday objects, turning mundane dimes into vessels of possibility, excitement, and wonder. And as this fascination spreads, the legend grows, not just among collectors, but across mainstream audiences, because the story resonates with anyone who has ever dreamed of discovering a fortune in an unexpected place. And that broad appeal ensures that the 2002 dime will remain a symbol of modern rarity, a testament to the unpredictable forces that create value, and a reminder that even in an age of mass production, perfection, scarcity, and demand can converge to create objects of almost mythical status. And the coin's journey from minting press to circulation to potential multi-million-dollar treasure highlights not only the mechanical and technical elements of numismatics, but also the human dimension, the ambition, curiosity, hope, and obsession that drive collectors to extraordinary lengths, examining thousands of coins, studying microscopic details, and patiently waiting for the opportunity to encounter the elusive specimen that embodies the ultimate expression of rarity. And as stories continue to circulate online, videos are made, and new enthusiasts are drawn into the chase, the legend of the 2002 dime grows ever larger, ensuring that interest will persist for generations, because the principles that underpin extreme modern coin values, accidental rarity, survival, condition, and collector desire, are timeless, and they connect each coin to a narrative far greater than its face value, turning a 10-cent piece into an emblem of aspiration, possibility, and human fascination. And in that sense, the 2002 Mint Mark I dime is more than a coin. It is a story, a challenge, a dream, and a reminder that history is alive, and that treasures may still be hiding in plain sight, waiting for the moment when the right eye, the right mind, and the right person finally recognizes the extraordinary potential within the ordinary. So if this tale of hidden wealth, incredible rarity, and the thrilling hunt for perfection captivated you, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for even more astonishing coin stories that prove the impossible can still be found in your pocket change.